I believe we're live now, gentlemen. Welcome to the PlayCallers pod. It's great to be back for yet another episode. And I'm joined with some incredible people tonight. It's Monday. No better way to start the evening than with us. Gentlemen, it's the NFL Draft 2021. Big night. Big night. Welcome, gentlemen. And first off, we want to introduce our panel. We have Coach Kirk Brassard, Coach Chris Williams, and joining us this evening. And our all-star panel, we have Tyson Lee, quarterback from the Mississippi State Bulldogs. He was a scout for the Rams. And we have Tyson Tharps. He was a scout for Detroit Lions. We have an incredible evening ahead of you. I hope you guys stay tuned. And like always, make sure that you comment if you have a question for the gentleman, for the panel, because it's getting started right now. Now, I think two of the gentlemen here know that I'm going to ask this right off the bat. What happened on Friday? We have Miami Dolphins, San Fran. What is going on? But before we get to that, first off, I want to put the panel and the limelight on Tyson Lee. Tyson, this is your first time on our show. Thank you very much. And just want to know, what are you up to these days? How's life going?
Oh, life is great. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. Married, 4 kids, and I am an elementary school principal. So my kids are currently at home, hopefully watching this, and I'm in the office to where it's quiet. I have a little bit of light, and I told Coach Broussard trying to bring back some good memories from my football playing days.
Oh, so we have some stories that we're going to hear maybe possibly when Coach Broussard gets to the mic there. Terry, thanks for joining us again. And Absolutely. As always, it's a pleasure. My gentlemen, always. They're the two that make me look great every week, Coach Broussard and Coach Williams. Okay, I'm going in there. Okay, what is going on? What is up the sleeves for San Fran? Big trade on Friday. Big things going on. 1 month today, we have the big day. Tyson, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on what's going on with San Fran?
Well, I think it goes to show a lot of these teams realize they have to win and win early, or at least win now. And so typically in the past, I think a lot of organizations would wait it out, try to develop through the draft. But now a lot of these guys are pressured to get the one-hit wonders and try to make things happen. So in some ways, I think it's just the pressures that years ago you had a couple of years. And now I think a lot of teams are trying to get guys in quicker and earlier so they're not having to develop some of the mainstay positions, and develop in free agency, try to find some other positions. So, it'll be interesting to see exactly who they want and what they were going for.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I had to bring up the Dolphins. I don't know if I had a choice to bring up the Dolphins. And these are two gentlemen. They know what my story is with the Miami Dolphins, my connection there. Terry, do you think they will trade Jimmy G?
Yeah, with the Dolphins, I think they've done a great job with that Laramie Tunsil trade. They really developed, a ton of first-round picks to really, stockpile talent. So I think they've done a great job of being able to flip that. And now they're kind of in a position to have the pick of the litter of who they want that's going to fit what they're trying to do moving forward. It looks as if they feel like really comfortable with the quarterback that they took last year, and now it's kind of about developing the talent around him so that he can have the success that they're looking for him to have moving forward. So I think their thinking is they're set at quarterback. And again, I think it's just kind of building around him. And, they came close to making the playoffs last year. So they're right on the cusp of doing some great things down there. So they look like they're headed in the right direction.
Coach Broussard, I see you shaking your head kind of a little bit when I bring up the Dolphins. Whenever I bring them up. Tell me, what do you think? Like this, we're talking about San Fran. Who do you think their target is for this third pick overall?
I think they're going to go after Justin Fields. I think they did that purposely. They knew they had to move up and get a quarterback. They knew they needed a face of the franchise, and it goes back to like what Tyson said. Teams don't have long. These gyms don't have very long to turn it around, and a lot of these teams are willing to, give up the house to get that quarterback. And I think San Francisco may be a quarterback away from being a really, really team that's close. Obviously, bringing Justin Fields in the first year, he's going to have to, take his lumps and develop. But, after maybe a year or two of seasoning, I think the 49ers, if they were to land a Justin Fields and he does pan out, like a lot of us believe, to be an all-star caliber player, I think you could see San Francisco competing for championships. And, and then going back to Miami, it's kind of like what Terry said. I think they came out on top in this thing because they loaded up on draft picks for the future. Great draft pick. So I think that GM is going to come out looking pretty. I think he's doing some great things in Miami. He's really changing it around. I just don't know if I'm sold on Tua quite yet, but obviously the organization is. So.
Yeah, well, maybe it's not quite to a time, but Coach Williams, what are your thoughts? San Fran, Miami making big news last Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what people are actually going to pull off, but I first of all, I felt like, I've always, been a quarterback guy, so I've always thought about the fact that, Tua's a lefty, right? So you can do some things, with Tua, and you're actually protecting the opposite side of Tua. So I'm thinking that, Miami is going to be okay. I mean, they've got some guys that can stand foot on that side of his backside. So I think that, Tunsil, became an expendable guy if you're thinking in that light. So I think, Miami's going to be fine. I do think that this shows that they are, committed to Tua, at least committed to making sure that he gets the proper opportunity to be that guy. Mm-hmm. And then, with San Francisco, I mean, trading up, I mean, from everything that I'm getting, I really think that San Francisco, and I know I can see where coach is going with that, but I think San Francisco might be, based on Shanahan, I think San Francisco may be, where Mac Jones falls in from Alabama. I think he's a type of a fit for the way that, Shanahan likes to, to coordinate his offense. And I think that may be a good fit. I think Mac Jones is going to come out of this, surprise. That quarterback, what happens after the first quarterback taken, which I do think is going to be Trevor Lawrence, obviously. But after that, I think Mac Jones is going to move in there and throw some things off. So I think, we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think Shanahan is looking for something different than Garoppolo. Garoppolo is a little bit of a, it's Garoppolo doesn't really make the play outside of the play. And I kind of think that he's looking for something different.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, Coach, on that first one. Go ahead.
Coach, to go back on that, earlier in the season, you made a comment and said A.J. McCarron is a better quarterback than Mac Jones. And A.J. McCarron is a mid-round pick. So how do you have Mac Jones being at this point, a top 3 pick? How does that happen?
That's not the way I think, Coach. That's just what I think may be happening in San Francisco. Obviously, Coach, every draft is going to be different. So the levels of guys are different. I do think McCarron is a better player than Mac Jones, but I kind of think Shanahan may be leaning that way.
Okay.
That's just me.
So do you think, I guess I'm curious now, do you think a rookie Mac Jones is better than a vet in Garoppolo?
Tyson, I don't necessarily think so, but just from researching it and kind of looking at some things and, through the grapevine, some stuff that you find. I just think that Shanahan, believes in some of the things that Jones can do. And I just think that I think Garoppolo is first of all, he's an injury prone guy in some ways. And then second of all, Garoppolo, I don't necessarily think they think Garoppolo is that guy to get him over the hump. And I don't think they think Garoppolo really plays well with playmakers. I think they think Garoppolo is sort of that steady guy, that pocket guy, that safe guy. And I don't think that they feel like he's that guy to take advantage of playmakers. And that's just if I had to predict, that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me remind you, gentlemen, this is a panel. So if you have an opinion, obviously state it. I know we're going to be going through a lot of opinions tonight. And some you may agree with and some you may not. And, feel free to voice your opinion. You want to have the floor. But first, we're going to start with Tyson. Again, thank you very much for joining the PlayCallers pod this evening. We're talking about the NFL Draft 2021. we're breaking things down, and the spotlight is on you. We want you to give us your top quarterback picks. Who's standing out for you when it comes to the prospects?
Yeah, Tracy, I don't think it'll be a surprise the most. I have Trevor 1, Fields 2. And to me, I wrote it down, the 3, 4, 5, I think it's dependent upon system. One of the in the league, so much I think of success is system based. You see guys who were in one system, maybe not developed as well, and then they move into another system and they do better. And then two, just kind of philosophically, this is kind of how I operate. A lot of these guys, first, second rounds, long-term sustainability isn't really there. A lot of these guys who get developed are the ones who, and when I say get developed, I'm thinking third round and below. You come in lower expectations, you come in behind a vet, or at least you come in with a chip on your shoulder competing for number one. Whereas oftentimes these first round guys come in given the number one position, and not that they don't deserve it, but there's just something about the process of coming in as the number two and being able to develop and move into the number one that I think psychologically and from a team oriented standpoint, I really believe that long term, that's where a lot of your success comes. But the 5 that I wrote down, Trevor 1, Justin 2, I go back and forth, Zach and Trey 3 and 4, and my sleeper is Kyle Trask. I'm just a Trask fan, mainly because of his path. He didn't bounce around. He didn't go through the trade portals or whatever they call them in college now. He waited his turn. And to me, there's some leadership and some personal development there that I think can really help a team not necessarily be the franchise person, but the guy that you say, hey, I believe if we need him, he could bring us out. And so, yeah, I would say Trevor, Justin, Zach, and Trey, they're wild cards for me. And I would put Mac behind Trask.
Okay. Now, gentlemen, are you agreeing with this? Do you think he's left anybody out? Anybody want to give some feedback on that one?
I'm curious to know, what does he think about Zach Wilson? I've watched a lot of tape on him. He has a high completion percentage, but when you watch BYU's offense, it's a lot of high percentage throws, a lot of short throws. And when he had to push the ball down the field, he struggled. And if you watch the game when they played Coastal Carolina, he really struggled in that game. Coastal Carolina had a lot of pressure in his face, and I don't think he did so well. And I think he's a lot of hype. I think he makes great throws on air, but when you watch him with pressure in his face, which that's what the NFL is all about, being able to make complete and accurate ball with pressure in your face, I think he struggles there. And I think someone's gonna pick him high, and I think they're gonna regret it in 2 or 3 years. What do you think about?
He's got the quick hands. One of the things in the RPO heavy league-based offense now, guys who can get the ball out of their hands quickly are just, to me, a step ahead. And when he's far like an not Aaron Judge, I'm thinking baseball. Help me here.
Rogers.
Yeah, just the non or unorthodox type throws. And to me, in college, you can get away with those. Mahomes is he's just a unique bird. But when you see guys like Zach, the way he gets away with some things in college, the level of competition, time in the pocket, anticipating throws, a lot of those are behind. But in college, you can do that. Once you get to the league, behind means pick six. And I think for guys like him, obviously successful, high completion percentage. But to your point, Coach, I think once you get into the league, these guys are going to go lock man or 2-man, and you got some tight windows, and there's not much space to drop it into. So I think that transition will just be one that, honestly, you won't know until he gets into the heat of the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, Tyson, it's interesting that you had brought up Kyle Trask. I know on my first appearance on the show, I had Kyle Trask, I think, number 2. And then the next day, he presumably went out and threw 3 picks in the first quarter. So, but that had a lot to do with guys that had opted out that he had been throwing the ball to that are going to be first-round picks coming, the next 30 days. So that has a lot to do with it when you don't have that typical timing that you would have, right? But I'm excited about him as well. I like you said, I like his path. Obviously, he's not a runner. He's a big guy that's going to sit in the pocket and make decisions from there. But he also does a good job of moving his feet within the pocket. And he just seems like a guy that is willing to be coached and wants to get better. Like you said, he kind of has that chip in his shoulder. He wasn't some big recruit that was just handed the keys to the car. He's had to earn everything he's got, and he did it at a very high level with the best, league in college football. So I'm pretty high on him. And then the same thing kind of Kirk said with Zach Wilson. I do like Zach Wilson. He's got upside and he's got kind of the swagger and the things that you do want in a quarterback. But like Kurt said, and it's the game that they had where they actually played athletes that were just similar in caliber, athleticism in Coastal Carolina, he struggled. And then he's kind of got a slender frame. In the NFL, that's a grown man league, right? And if you're going to be a top 3 pick, you're probably not going to a really good football team 9 times out of 10, right? And so your job is to elevate everybody else around you. And you're coming from BYU. That's a pretty huge jump, right? So there are some things that do worry me about him. And I feel like every year there's that one quarterback that everybody gets super, super excited about. And I feel like he's that guy this year.
Well, his style of play is appealing. It's eye-catching because it's unconventional. And I think at best, Zach Wilson is Baker Mayfield at best. I think Baker Mayfield has plateaued, and I think Zach Wilson is at best Baker Mayfield.
No, that's a real good comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I like that comparison. And I think too, and once again, you talk about, building a franchise. The franchise isn't made in a year. I mean, you talk about somebody that you want to build around for the next 2 to 4 to 5 years. And I think going back to even a guy like Trask or even a Mac Jones, Mac, I think he's probably, they used to talk about the strongest based on size. As far as maximizing ability, I think Mac is one who I think you saw his ceiling. And what I mean by that is he did everything really, really well. But he also had some of the best playmakers in the country around him. And so that's hard to judge when you go from obviously playing in the SEC, but again, playing in the league. I mean, you got Devonte Smith all on the other side of the field. And so, that transition, I think, will be one. But then also, I think because he is not as athletic as others, he realizes that and he anticipates and he does things to offset his lack of ability. And sometimes those are the guys who make it because they realize that, man, their work ethic off the field is more important than what they do on the field. Like the Trevor Lawrence's, excellent athlete. Sometimes he lets his arm do too much and not his body and his feet aren't where they're supposed to be, Yeah. And so those are some of those technical skills that time will tell as, an Urban Meyer or organizations are trying to build around this certain quarterback. What pieces do you put around him? Do you build an offense specifically for the quarterback or do you build an offense for the system? And to me, that can be a different approach.
Okay, well,
I'm curious to know, Tyson, in 8 years, if you were to project 8 years from now, what are we looking at with Trevor Lawrence? Are we looking at how many Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl? What do you think? Man. I could say how many Pro Bowls because the Super Bowl can depend on a general manager's decisions. But how many Pro Bowls are we looking at with Trevor Lawrence, you think, at the end of his career?
So I'm a kind of
before you answer that, I think Trevor Lawrence is Andrew Luck at best.
I think Trevor Lawrence, right? I think in terms of holistic quarterback play, he's the best one in the draft. I still believe that if you're a first or second round quarterback, statistics aren't in your favor. And what I mean by that, if you look at, generally speaking, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, I'm just thinking the past few years, guys who have been first, second round draft picks, where are they now? They've bounced around. Some of them aren't even in the league anymore. And I think because of the college game, and I won't get into a ton of detail, and this is the philosophical side for me, a lot of these kids aren't fully mature and they're just not ready to lead a franchise. And I think that's why coming in as a third rounder or more, you come in with a chip on your shoulder, you come in more as a student than the teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when you bring these guys in first or second round, they assume the role as a teacher and they're just not ready for it. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that's just a little bit of a way that I see it.
Okay, well, if you're just tuning in right now, we have our panel this evening for Monday, 1 month away from the draft. Big day. We have Tyson Lee joining us, and he just gave us his top 5 for quarterback prospects. We have Terry Tharps joining us again this evening. We have Coach Kirk Brassard and Coach Chris Williams joining us. As always, if you have a comment or if you want to ask the gentleman a question, please feel free to comment on our live this evening, and I'll make sure that they get that question. And moving along, let's go to Terry. Terry, give me your top prospects when it comes to running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, so really starting with the wide receivers, I think it's a really deep wide receiver draft this year. I think when you're talking about where your top 4 to 5 guys, number one for me would be Jamar Chase. I think, obviously Devonte Smith had numbers that were video game style numbers, but Jamar Chase in 2019 did the exact same thing with another, pro prospect on the other side, and Justin Jefferson, who's maybe the best young receiver in all of the NFL. So he would be the guy that I would think would be the top guy taken off the board. I think he's a true number one. He's about 6'1", 200 pounds. In the national championship game, AJ Terrell was a first-round pick of the Falcons. He basically had his way with him. So that kind of sold me on what his upside is at the next level. Number 2 for me would be Jalen Waddell. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but his game is all about speed. He may be the fastest guy in the draft. The guy can get from 0 to 60 in a hurry. I think one of the things that stands out about his speed is he's at top speed after his second step. A lot of guys can't do that. That's really rare to be able to get from 0 to 60 in less than 2 to 3 steps, and he has that in his game. He's not just a deep guy. He's got quickness off the line of scrimmage. He's got elite level quickness. And some of the things that I saw on tape that really stood out is his toughness. That guy will go up and catch the ball in traffic, but catch the ball at the highest point. And then he adds value in the return game. He's probably the best returner in all of college football. So I think he would be a perfect fit on a team that already has a number one, and then he could be on that other side and really exploit that matchup with your second best corner. My third guy would be Mr. Devonte Smith. His numbers speak for themselves. He's kind of Mr. Smooth, right? Everything he does looks effortlessly. The way he can decelerate and accelerate in and out of his break. He plucks the ball with ease with his hands. Again, he uses elite level quickness to get off the line and gets press coverage. If you're playing off of him, he eats your cushion. Probably a high to low 4.4 guy, but he plays probably faster than that. So everything that he does is just, he was completely dominant all the way from game 1 to the national championship game. And people don't even realize this. They had 2 receivers last year that went in the first round, and he had better numbers than both of them. So he's been productive throughout, his whole college career. I think that the thing that these general managers have to make a decision on is his size. He's about 6'1", but he's probably $175 soaking wet. Again, it's a physical league. Is he going to be able to withstand punishment over a long term? There's not a huge track record for guys as number ones able to do that. I think maybe Marvin Harrison's probably the last one to really have success like that. But he also had this guy named Peyton Manning as his quarterback, so that helps that a lot as well. So that's where I would have him. And now my third guy, so I got about 4 guys, so it's kind of fourth guy, 4A and 4B. I really like Terrace Marshall Jr. from LSU. I think he's another guy that has a lot of upsides, about 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a little leggy when it comes to coming in and out of his breaks, but that's to be expected when you're long like that. Has top end speed to get deep. And on that national championship team, he had about 13, 14 touchdowns and played in the slot. So that's going to be something he can use to his advantage at the next level as well, being able to understand those concepts and how to run routes from inside, because that's, it's a totally different deal than being on the outside. So, and then just going into 2020, he was having an excellent year before opting out. I think one of the biggest things he needs to work on is his concentration. He'll have the occasional drop, but when you look at the LSU receivers and their transition to the NFL, they seem to have a lot of success. So I don't know why you would want to back away from that now. And then really that last guy for me is another kind of small, twitchy guy, is Rondell Moore from Purdue. Really love his game. The slot is where he's going to make all of his money. It's about 5'8", 5'9", 190. thickly built kid. I just looked at his numbers the other day, his pro day. I think he jumped about 42.5 inches and ran a 4.2. So explosiveness is there. I think the thing that he's had a little bit of an injury history, a little bit of an issue with his ankles and things like that. But if he's healthy, he's probably the best slot receiver in this draft. I remember back his freshman year, they played Ohio State and they went against Shaun Wade. It was considered the best slot defensive back in college football, and he pretty much had his way with him and won that game for them as a freshman. So he's been, competitive, and he's been productive since the minute he stepped on campus. So those will kind of be my 5 guys. And then obviously you got guys like Kadarius Toney, Rashad Bateman that deserve to be in that conversation. Just kind of, again, what Tyson had mentioned earlier. It's about system and where do you see these guys fitting based on the personnel and the scheme that you have in place.
Terry, where do you put Kyle Pitts?
He's a tight end / receiver. Obviously, if you're, he's a matchup nightmare. You can put him anywhere. You can put him outside. He's fast enough to beat your number 1 corner. Then you can, obviously, if you put him inside, he has a safety and a linebacker. That's just not even fair. So I have him in my tight end category today. But, I mean, what he can do and how productive he was, watching him against Texas A&M this year, he was a man among boys. So, again, he's a mismatch nightmare. And you just don't see guys with that type of size being able to run the way he does. So success is waiting on him at the next level.
The thing I like about Pitts is, Pro Football Focus did a study and said that he had the most catches that were contested in the NCAA by double what the next guy had. So a lot of his catches, it proves he has strong hands to really fight for the ball in tight windows, which you get a lot of that in the league. So
when you're thinking about a number 1 now, are you thinking a guy who can play the slot and the outside? To me, it's interesting, like a Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddell, Devonte Smith. I think those 3 guys can play the slot or the 1 outside. But I often wonder now, when you're talking about making that investment, can you invest in somebody who's more of a slot guy versus a Pitts who could play arguably all 3? He could line up attached, he could line up in the slot or as the number 1. I just was curious, Terry, when you're thinking about receivers, does your number 1 have to be able to play the inside and the outside?
I think that all just kind of goes back to scheme and system. When I'm thinking about Waddell and Moore, it's also with their added value in the return game as well. Yeah. When I'm looking at Waddell, I see him as a 2. When I'm looking at Moore, it's in the slot or as a 2. Maybe he's a good fit in a scheme like where Green Bay, something like that, where he's, the end of the first round where they've got talent around him, and now he's that extra added piece to maybe get them over the hump and do some things underneath. So that's kind of where I see him. And obviously towards the end of the draft, that's where you're able to do a lot of that kind of stuff and make decisions based on that. So that's kind of where I see those guys fitting in. But definitely, it's very important to be able to be interchangeable when you're talking about a number 1. But I feel like Jamar is kind of head and shoulders above everybody just because of his elite skills, and he has the size to be able to take that punishment for years in the National Football League.
Okay, we have Coach.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to say we have Coach Steve Leclerc that is chiming in here saying hey to everybody. He's watching, he's commenting. Yeah, there we go.
Says Kellen Mond is a sleeper.
Yeah. Again, we encourage everybody to comment on the show. Joining us tonight, we have Tyson Lee, we have Terry Tharps, we have Coach Kirk Brassard, we have Coach Chris Williams. And gentlemen, I know that some are agreeing, some aren't agreeing when it comes to top 5 picks. Tyson, any words on for Terry? Because coming up next, we have Coach Broussard going to be chiming in on his thoughts and bouncing off what Terry has said.
Yeah, to me, I'm a Kyle Pitts fan just because of his versatility. I'm thinking biggest bang for the buck now. A lot of these systems are trying to create matchups, mismatches on the field. And I feel a Pitts can create mismatches in any personnel that you put him in. He's a mismatch. The second thing is I just wonder, Jamar Chase, him being out, what does that mean? Typically not a lot of tread on the tires is a good thing. But then at the same time, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm not making that decision and I don't know, but just not playing for a season, you're basing everything on a year before in a pro day. And how comfortable do you feel with a guy you haven't seen in a full season? But even Jalen Waddell, Jalen was out for the end of the year, and these are all things that GMs put a lot of money into. But yeah, that would just be my hesitancy with Chase or Waddle, is just injury prone for one, and then just been a little bit since he's been on the field. So
I think it's going to make their transition a little more difficult. I think you're not going to see them catch their stride until later in the season, because you got to get acclimated to, first of all, just being a football player again. When you've been sitting out for a year, it's different. And then you've been sitting out, and then we just throw you into the NFL. Well, typically, it's not like a fish that you just throw in water and you start swimming. I think it's going to take them a little while to kind of catch fire. But I think you'll see a big second half of the season with a Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle. But just to go back to what you said earlier, Tyson, as far as can that number one guy, does that number one guy have to be a guy that can play in the slot or outside? I think when you have those guys like a Devonte Adams and these type guys that can do it, that's just a unicorn. I think Kyle Pitts is a unicorn. We won't see another Kyle Pitts probably for a few drafts, if we even do. So when you have those unicorn guys out there, you got to snatch them up, because that's rare. That's like a Randy Moss type unicorn type of status level. So I don't think it's a requirement to draft someone in the first round, but I think if it's out there, man, you can't pass it up. You got to get that guy. You won't see that guy often.
So, I mean, where would you put CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper in relation to Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle? I mean,
sorry, you brought up Waddle. We do have somebody that's commented the Pats draft up. Waddle is a top 15 pick, he thinks. So I'll just add that to your thoughts that you guys are going on with.
I think in comparison to a CeeDee Lamb to a Jamar Chase, I think Jamar Chase potentially, when he catches stride, he's Devonte Adams. And I don't think CeeDee Lamb is ever Devonte Adams. I think CeeDee Lamb is a guy that can play inside and outside, but he's not going to be quite as effective as a Devonte Adams could do it both and do it a lot better. He can do it. He can do it, and he can get you through some games doing it, but is he going to be just a stud at doing it? Those Devonte Adams, those Jamar Chases, those guys are just a little bit different. And I think Chase is in that category.
I agree with that. I think he adds a little bit more of an element after the catch. I think that's what kind of separates him. He turns into a running back after he catches the football. And so I think that's what really kind of sets him apart. And obviously with Pitts, I mean, if we're talking tight ends, it's him and then it's everybody else. So I just have him in that category. But he's a unique talent. I mean, like you said, it's rare. We're probably won't see that for another 5 years from a guy like that. So.
Okay, Coach Chris Williams. I see kind of like, you're agreeing with some of this stuff, but I'm not sure if I'm feeling the love here, because I feel like you want to say something. What are your thoughts so far?
No way. I'm just trying to hold on to a thought that I had. I mean, now Terry and Tyson are breaking this thing down at a high level, so don't get me wrong. But I always got to mess with Coach Broussard, right? So I've been trying to make sure I hold this thought before I forget it. But I know Terry and Tyson are both thinking, what is Coach talking about? Andrew Luck at best. What does that mean? You know what I mean?
It means
Luck.
it means
now, Coach. I mean, Andrew Luck. You could argue Andrew Luck based on who's in the Hall of Fame right now. I could make an argument that Andrew Luck's a Hall of Famer now based on some of the other quarterbacks.
Let's just say, before you start, I could tell that Coach Williams had something to say.
I was just trying.
He was bouncing back and forth. So, gentlemen, go at it.
I'm not saying Lawrence is not a gifted prospect, and I'm not knocking Andrew Luck. I'm just saying Trevor Lawrence is not Peyton Manning. He'll never be Peyton Manning. He'll never be on that level. He's more of an Andrew Luck ceiling. That's his ceiling. That's what I'm saying. I think his ceiling is 6 or 7 Pro Bowls, maybe 8.
Okay.
Pretty good.
I guess it's in some ways semantic. What has there been a number 1 or number 2 overall pick that has ever exceeded expectations? You know, once again,
I like that.
You know, and that's, to me, that's the danger in being a first. Don't draft me in the third round. You know, because it's like Russell Wilson. I mean, arguably one of the best to ever do it, and I still believe it's because he came in the third round. Like you come in, and even not only the franchise but media, because there's a lot of hype that comes with first round picks, and I don't think people psychologically can escape that. I think from Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, once you get to the next level, it's not like college ball. It's 24/7. Everything you do is watched. It's micromanaged. You live in a glass house. And I think that over time really impacts. And so that's why, you know, I was just asking really out of curiosity, you know, what top 5 draft pick, particularly a quarterback, has ever exceeded expectations? Whereas on the other side, you look at some of the most successful, and it's typically because the expectations were so low, they were able to kind of, I guess, overachieve.
Absolutely, I like that. That's a great point of view. That, you know, I've always been a Luck fan. I think
that's a
healthy Andrew Luck, I thought, you know, was on pace, you know, to being in the argument for as a Hall of Fame guy. So to me, it was, you know, I don't necessarily think if Trevor Lawrence is shooting for an Andrew Luck healthy career that he's going to be in a bad place. That's basically what I'm kind of messing with Coach at on that.
Oh, it's always fun when the two of you have to, you know, go at it.
Listen, going back to the receivers, and I'm not saying this because I'm a homer, but Kadarius Toney is the steal of the draft. Watch.
Guys, guess where he went to school? You guys know where he went to college.
Hey, doesn't matter because he's a Gator. Kadarius Toney he's different. He's different. Watch him. He's different.
Can he be a steal if he's late first round? Is that still considered a steal?
I think it is, because I think he should be top 10.
Really?
Wow.
Kadarius Toney will be better than Jalen Waddell. Watch.
So what's his size?
I think he's about 5'11", 190.
Yeah.
He's close to 6 foot. He measured in at 5'11" and a half.
He's different after the catch, though. He's different, 100%.
Give me somebody that's comparable to him.
There's nobody. Well, the closest I'd give you is probably.
Are you going to say Percy Harvin?
Tariq Hill.
Tariq Hill. You know, I was in St. Louis when we drafted Tavon, and I thought Tavon was going to take the NFL over.
Yeah.
And I think it's system. I think it's injuries. But when I think of Toney, in some ways, I see him as that guy. Like college, I mean, you put him against – there's no one that could hold him one-on-one. Nobody. But it just didn't translate, and I don't know why. But I just wasn't sure. Man, Tyreek's a boss now.
Yeah.
Do you think that Kadarius is kind of positionless in a way?
I know. I think he's a slot guy. I think he belongs in the slot. He thrives in the slot. He is. I don't think he can play outside. I think he's going to have to play inside. But the thing that separates Kadarius Toney is not what he is out after the ball. I mean, that's the obvious. After the ball, good luck with he broke more tackles than anyone in the NCAA this year, as well as he didn't drop a ball all year. He caught every pass thrown to him that was catchable. And that's a PFF breakdown. He's the only player that did that. So
he's a heck of a player. If you're just comparing him to Florida guys, I put him somewhere. I think Terry's on the right track there with Percy Harvin, but I put him somewhere between, Percy Harvin and, you guys remember Chad Jackson. And there's a little bit of go get the rock in this guy. So he's not necessarily as quick twitch as Percy Harvin, but there's something special about that kid when the ball gets in an area. So I mean, I can see where you're going with that, Coach. I mean, there's something special there, but again, like Tyson says, I mean, you just never know how that may shake. But I can see you if we're all making guesses, that would be a really good educated guess there for sure.
But I think too, if you see one thing, Andy Reid's done a great job with Tyreek Hill is he just creates mismatch nightmares, motions, Jets, just finding ways to get him the ball in space. And I think a guy like Tony, if you can get in a system to where you're not having to recreate, you just funnel him into a system that's already been created rather than trying to get specific package. That's what I've always admired about Andy Reid is it's just part of his offense, and he brings people into that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some, they bring a guy in who is versatile, but they've never really had a versatile personnel, and they try to make it happen, but it's so foreign to linemen and everybody else, it doesn't transition as well.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I guess we'll kind of wait and see what system he gets in.
I got to ask you this, Tyson. I mean, that being said, bringing up the kid that's who we're talking about, the kid in Kansas City, Tyreek. Yeah. So bringing him up, do you think that guy thrives? I mean, he's in that tweener area too. Does he thrive if he doesn't end up with Andy Reid? I mean, could that go a different way if he's not with that guy?
I'm a tweener guy, meaning tweeners work in tweener places. I don't think every tweener can work at certain places. And I think the way that you have Mahomes, but I mean, you got Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends. I mean, because of all of that, to me, he's able to thrive more than putting him in an offense that you thought he would thrive, and he just hasn't been able to. It's like the Rams, they just signed Deshaun Jackson. I think what McVay will try to do is create some particular mismatches for Deshaun Jackson. But I think if it's not part of the overall brand of the offense, I think sometimes you bring guys in, you try packages, but it doesn't tend to work like it has and worked really well for Tyreek and the Chiefs.
Okay. Coach Kirk Brassard, let's go back to you. Is there anyone else that you want to add into the mix tonight? I mean, we've already brought up a lot of names, prospects from different areas. Anybody else that you would like to discuss?
As far as sleepers, no. I mean, the thing is, I really think that, going back to Tony a little bit, if you expect him to run a blazing 4.3, 4.4, he's not going to do it. He's going to run a 4.6. He might run a 4.5, but when he has pads on, he's going to run that same 4.5 with pads on. He's just a guy that's tough to get a hand on in a phone booth, so, but he's not going to test well in the 40, most likely. Yeah.
Okay.
What about Sam Ellinger?
I don't know, man.
At all?
Wow.
No.
You like him?
He's got a little bit of that moxie in him to me that you don't know about those guys. I think he's one of those where he plays with his emotions on his sleeve. He's passionate. And I'm just always a believer in bringing somebody in and letting them learn under somebody for a while and seeing what they can grow into. So sleeper in that sense, but no, I just had him written down as I was looking at some of the different prospects for the class. I was just curious, were there any other QBs or even wide receivers that we hadn't mentioned?
Okay.
There was a guy that I liked as a sleeper receiver from Iowa, Amir Smith-Marset. I think he's got some explosiveness and can be a deep threat in the right type of system. I think his production was a little bit limited this year. They had a first-year quarterback that really struggled, but I think he's got some ability, and he also, again, was one of the better kick returners in the country in 2019. So I think he could be somebody in that 4th or 5th round that could add value to your wide receiver room, especially with the special team.
No one's talking about Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. I think Elijah Moore is going to really be an impact player as well. I like him a lot. Very productive. He wasn't the highest recruit out of high school, but I've watched him in high school because I'm really familiar with the area that he played in, and loved him in high school. Loved him at Ole Miss. Was a perfect system with him there with Lane Kiffin, and I think he's going to be a guy that you need to really keep an eye on.
Okay. Coach Chris Williams, I just got to step away for a half a second, but the spotlight is on you right now. We want to hear your prospects when it comes to the offensive line.
Okay. I just wrote down a couple guys here. I mean, I'm a big fan of athletes when it comes to O linemen. So there's a couple guys. I mean, I think we all, we know where we're at with the offensive tackle position. This Panay Sewell kid out of Oregon is probably, as athletic and explosive as I've seen in a while. And I kind of think, when I'm talking about it, he plays explosive. I mean, the hands are explosive, gets off the ball, can get to the second level. That guy, I think, and I'm going to make a comparison. I think a lot of people are talking about does this kid have a Hall of Fame left tackle type of can you break him down and put him in that category? I think, athletically, he's going to fall somewhere in between the high end ceiling of a Jonathan Ogden and then the low end ceiling of a Chris Samuels / Willie Anderson type. So I think you got yourself a good solid, 12-year, 13-year type left tackle. I mean, athletically, he's there. And I don't like the fact that he did not play this year. So opting out, and I'm not quite sure where that's going to leave him when it comes to reps, but just as an athlete, and this is how I judge it. I mean, it's just athletically, when you're just picking and pulling athletes off the tree, I think this guy's got a real shot to be a long-term guy on the left side. I think Rashawn Slater's another kid who's up in our area, Terry out of Northwestern, another kid that opted out, and maybe not as deep of an athlete as say Sewell, maybe not as a well-rounded of an athlete as Sewell, but at 6'4", 315, I mean, he brings some size. There's some issues with him and engagement when you're watching him. I mean, and we had a chance to see a lot of Northwestern ball up here where I live, but I don't like necessarily how he can be thrown off of engagement. So, but I do think that you put him in the right situation, that's a guy that possibly and probably, could be a solid guy. But the Sewell guy is far and above. We're talking between 1 and 2. We're talking a big gap between 1 and 2 here. And so if I move to guard, those are my top 2 at the tackle, and I'm going 2 each because we're going 3 positions here. But at the guard spot, and again, we're just picking and choosing athletes. So we're talking Wyatt Davis being a guy out of Ohio State, 6'4", 315, just a 1-year starter. That concerns you, but when you're talking get off and getting to the next level and being effective at the next level, this guy's got it. I mean, this guy's got a gear, and he's under control, which I like. When you're looking at the second guy here, and I throw in this guy, Elijah Vera Tucker, and you guys may be familiar now. He goes possibly as a tackle and a guard, so I think this guy's a guy that, 6'4", 315, USC, I think, and they played him most of his career as a guard. But again, just picking athletes off the tree, this guy's a guy that I do think can move around, but I think he'll start as a guard. But you could see him, maybe slip in there as a right side tackle type of a guy in the right situation. And then my centers, we're staying with Ohio State. Josh Myers, a guy, snap and go and get there and cutting guys off and being able to do what he needs to do on the front side of the play. I really like him. 6'5", 312, good size as a center, can move. I like that. And my guy, I'm being a homer like Kirk here. Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. He's 6'5", 325, another athlete. We're just talking guys that you can put up the front and you can move around and they can get where you need them to get. He's had some injuries. You're not quite sure where he's at, but when he's healthy, we're talking about the best old lineman in the nation. So I think that's a guy that you're gonna have to deal with if he can be healthy. And you're talking about another guy at that center spot that's gonna give you one of those, double digit, decade. He's gonna give you a decade worth of solid center play. And up here, I don't know, maybe also Terry might know of this guy. This is my wild card guy, my sleeper, Quinn Miners out of Wisconsin Whitewater. Is a center that, he runs 6'3", right at about 325, but he played really well at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he matched up really well. D3 guy. It reminds me of, if I think back to Ali Marpet, guy at Tampa, comes out of D3. I think he was a Hobart guy.
I like that kid.
Yeah, so this guy reminds me of Ali Marpet. And I think you're talking another guy. Ali Marpet has carved himself out a really good, solid career at Tampa Bay. He's a guy that's going to end up having a 10, 12-year career too. So I think this kid, Wisconsin Whitewater, the way he performed at the Senior Bowl, I didn't quite know because we heard about him living here in Wisconsin. You hear a lot about him, but when I saw him at the Senior Bowl and throughout all the drills, I mean, he was right there, man. I mean, he's right battling with the big boys and coming from D1. So I think that's going to be my my sleeper pick out of that for guys that are athletic and guys that I think would last a while and be there for a minute. So that's
Chris, let me ask you something. So I'm just thinking last couple of years, last year, Andrew Thomas, New York, Becton, Isaiah Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. That transition from the college to the NFL in and of itself is a transition, but O-line play, when you think about non-negotiables, because I feel like some of the things some are drafting based on athleticism or ceiling, and they're just not meeting expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the non-negotiables that you say they have to have in order for me to trust the ceiling? Does that make sense? Like, hey, I need to see these specifics, and then I'll feel a little bit better about the raw athlete that you are or the developmental opportunity that I might have with you.
That's a really good question there, Tyson. I would just say if I'm leaning back on the non-negotiables, I would always take it back to performance versus, certain level talent, right? So we're talking about, this kid, Rashawn Slater, he showed up against the Ohio State defensive end, the big-time kid that came out last year. What's his name? The kid that went to Washington?
Yeah, Chase.
Yeah, Chase. Yeah. So I would say for me, I mean, it's just me, as performance goes against that high-level competition, how they perform there, you got to have been able to see it. So, I mean, for me, I've always been an athletic picker. I go in as the highest level I got, CFL, Arena League. So we're always just poaching athletes and feeling like you can do something with them from there. You guys probably see it a little bit different, but I would say for me, I would definitely want to see where that, which is why I wasn't on the Quinn Miners train so quickly until we see him versus that high level talent. And O-lineman is like a wrestling match, man. You got to see him against the top dog before you can make an adjustment, right?
It all goes back to turning on the tape. I mean, it all goes back to turning on the tape.
Sky don't lie, Coach. Isn't that what they say?
Yep. But I'm curious to know. You left out Alex Leatherwood.
I'm not a big fan, Coach. Okay. I think he's. Obviously he fits that athletic category, but he also, I try to go off of a little bit of a gut feel too, from a coaching standpoint, based on where you've been and seen some traits in some guys, and I think he's got a little bit of, and I hate to say it, but there's a little bit of a lazy bone there. I think that may catch up to him. So I think he went through that a little bit at Alabama. So I guess we'll see. I mean, athletic, he fits the mold, but there's something personality-wise that I'm just not quite sure, Coach. Kind of like the Darius. Remember and I'm jumbling names today because I'm thinking so hard. But Darius was a kid that played D-line and went to Buffalo. You guys know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, the D lineman.
Marcel Darius.
Darius. Yeah, that's right. But he had a little bit of that, not
all the ability in the world, no motor, huh?
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at on Leatherwood.
Is it still the case you can't coach motor?
Man, you can't coach it. You know it.
Imagine if Jadeveon Clowney had a consistent motor.
Oh man,
he'd be Lawrence Taylor all over again.
Mm-hmm. I agree, but like I said, in my world, we always go athlete first. You go athlete first, you can't go wrong. I mean, you're already flipping the coin anyway. So if you go athlete, you got at least a little bit of a tipping chance there.
We didn't get running backs. I think we overlooked running backs.
Coach had running back. Terry talked about him. Or you had him.
Yeah. We can go through that if that's something y'all want to do.
Yeah.
So just picked about 3 guys that I thought kind of really stood out to me, just kind of watching the film. that I think could be potential first, second round picks. Really, I think a lot of it kind of, again, goes to fit and what you're kind of looking for. Because a lot of times in today's game, running backs can be interchangeable. So that first guy for me would be Najee Harris, 6'2", 225, 230 pounds. I mean, man, and nimble feet for a guy that big. You just don't see guys that big that can move their feet like that. And I think just kind of watching him from 2019 to 2020, he's like really improved like his pad level. So he's running a lot less upright and running with that forward motion. He's also finishing runs. I think when he first kind of got to Alabama, he was more of a finesse guy. Had that California in him a little bit when he first got down to the SEC. But and for a guy that big, he can catch the football out of the backfield. He's very productive out of the backfield. I think the biggest thing, again, that we've all kind of talked about, you're playing behind probably the best offensive line in all of college football. And how does it translate when everything becomes even and you've kind of got to do a little bit more and rely on, your natural skill sets to be able to have success. But I really do like him. I think
can I ask you, Coach, before you move on? Because I just want to ask, and I respect everything you're saying, but I think about that kid, and I can't wrap my head around him. I mean, I look, Coach, and like I said, I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense. But to me, like that juice factor from a running back, that Alvin Kamara juice factor where he's gonna make something extra happen. I just, he seems to be an average type of a kid that may blend into the pack. He could be a very, very good one, or he could be that guy that just becomes that journeyman guy. So what is it that tips it over for you truly?
I think it's system with him, 100% system with him. I think that's a big thing with him. Mm-hmm. Again, like you said, there are some things he doesn't have that extra gear. He's not a home run hitter. Mm-hmm. He's not a chunk guy. He's one of those guys that's going to kind of grind a little bit to get his yards. So I think it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But I think from the complete package of being a running back, I think, in my opinion, he's kind of that top guy. And then
which one of you would have predicted Kamara? Any chance? 3 years ago he came out of Tennessee. Was it 18?
I don't think I just didn't see enough of him in college to really make that call.
Nobody did they?
Yeah.
Where did he start at? Alabama, I think. Wasn't that where he started?
He was at Alabama first. Alabama missed on that. Coach Tyson, I don't think anybody could pick that. But I do think if you're picking guys off trees again, and there's Alvin Kamara. If I'm looking at Kamara at a pro day at Alabama with the guys he was with, I got to be honest and say I might, because I like athletes, I might pick him first over some of that group he's with, especially the TJ Yeldons and some of those guys. So, he pops off the page. I mean, who knows how a career is going to go, but athletically, he pops off, I think.
He's 220 pounds and runs like he's 190.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, Terry, how does Najee Harris to you compare to say a Gurley in Atlanta? How do those two compare?
Yeah, I think they compare more in size and then their ability to be versatile with catching the ball. I think those are the more similar traits. I think Gurley's more athletic, more explosive. I would say pre-injury that he's had. Gurley, I think he's tore his knee and was just as explosive after, he having that happen to him. So I think the explosiveness is what separates those two, if I had to pick.
Okay, let's do last words around the panel. Anybody else have anything that they want to get out because they've just been sitting on something for this whole show? Tyson, we'll start with you.
No, not at all. I want to come back again so I can see Coach Broussard and Coach Chris go at it.
I know, it's the best part. It's like the highlight of the evening.
Hey, I'm curious to know, who does everyone think is going to win the draft, so to speak? Who's going to come out on top in this draft? Look like Miami's positioned himself for the future, but based on the current GMs that are in position, who has impressed you from the GM seat around the NFL right now that you think is going to have a lot of success in this draft?
I think I mentioned earlier, I think the Giants are doing an excellent job personally. They have really, to me, they recognize what their needs were. They've gone after them in free agency. And I think now going into the draft, they don't have to reach. I think they'll be able to go in and, to me, the best teams are the ones who win on the third rounders and down. Everybody knows the first two is those who can develop third through seventh to get those free agents. But right now, just the way they've brought in Rudolph, Holiday from Detroit, I think they're filling some pieces and slowly building around Daniel Jones a supporting cast that could be surprising. Not to mention Saquon didn't even play last year. Yeah. And so I think, they need to really internally offensive line. That's where I think it'll be important in the draft. But no, I'm really excited to see what Gettleman and Judge do in the draft this year.
Nice.
Okay, well, we do have a comment from Marty. He's saying Washington football team, Miami has picks, but we've seen picks that don't mean anything. Yeah, well, it's a hit and miss. We've seen this year after year, right?
That is true. Miami has to prove that they know what to do with the picks.
Yep. And then we have another Coach Steve Leclerc says, Pats, don't tell anyone. Okay. We honestly appreciate everyone who's chiming in on our conversation, who joins our conversation. So Tristan is saying, Patriots forecast looks for immediate impact from the draft. I think they come away with 3 day one starters.
Huh.
Interesting.
The Patriots.
Has Bill Belichick ever spent that much money in free agency?
No, man.
He never does.
No.
He's the most frugal man in football.
Man.
Yeah.
Hey, I know from experience, a lot of players, I hear a lot of locker room talk. A lot of people didn't want to go to the Patriots because they knew they wouldn't get that payday.
Yeah, and we know that it comes down to the money at the end of the day. Terry, do you have any last words when it comes to this NFL draft that we've been talking about this evening?
Oh, just appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Pleasure to chat with Tyson. You can definitely tell with his language that he's been in an NFL building for a long time and understands it. I almost felt like at times he was interviewing me. So,
there we go. Let's go.
Yeah, because when you get in those rooms, you have to be able to talk with conviction, and sometimes they'll word it to get you to kind of change the way you think, right? And you got to stick with it. So I felt a little bit of that. So I was like, man, I feel like I'm back in a building somewhere. So
That's good.
Hey, I'm curious to know, hey Tyson, when
up?
you sat with the Rams and you were kind of like the new guy in the building, and you guys talked personnel when you had those personnel meetings and they went around the table, did they get your opinion? And what was that like?
So, the best part about my job, I was the grunt. I made coffee. I did everything. In the year, so we did cross checks position wise, and I had quarterbacks, and I remember learning. I was just quiet. I didn't say much. I took it all in. Now, I will tell you this. I remember watching Buffalo film, University of Buffalo, when Khalil Mack was destroying people as a sophomore in college. And I don't have much to my fame, but I used to do the cut-ups. And I just remember saying, who is this guy? And the only time I was ever asked is who I thought would be a good quarterback. Do y'all remember the quarterback from Syracuse, Nassib?
Yeah. Ryan Nassib.
Man, I was so high on him. He had that, I don't know, just that he had something about him. And that's why I'm no longer in scouting, because I would have been a bust. But one thing I was going to say is, to me, I'm curious about Miami. And here's what I mean by that. They're building around Tua, but I don't – last year, Fitzpatrick came in a good bit. And I'm curious as to – you have all these picks, you're building around Tua, but are you building around the wrong thing? And to me, that'll be something only time will tell. But, Fitzpatrick came in and arguably did just as well as Tua did some last year. And now you have a lot of picks, but are you building around the right person, or should you build in a different way? So I'm just curious to see how that all pans out in the next couple of years.
I think they're building around Tua. But I think they have enough picks in place, and they're probably thinking in the back of their mind, we're building But if Tua doesn't work out, we can always pick another quarterback. We got a lot of picks, you know.
Who would you want to see if Tua wasn't there? Who would you want to see at the Miami quarterback position? Anyone? Just pick anybody. It doesn't have to be someone who's available, but ultimately, the end of the day,
they're probably kicking themselves that they didn't get Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, who do you guys think is gonna, at the end of their career, who's gonna look better, Justin Herbert or
Josh Allen,
the kid up in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow?
It's too early.
No, but if you got that scout's eye, I want to hear your prediction.
Oh man, coach.
Anybody can say it's too early.
Well, that's a tough one, guys. I'll let you go first.
You know, I didn't like Justin Herbert coming out. I was against that pick. I thought he'd be a bust, and I still think it's, you know, he could have that sophomore. You know, once they watch enough film on him, it could be looking at a different quarterback next year, because, you know, the NFL will catch up to you quick. And I didn't really care for Joe Burrow either.
You know, I think Herbert and Anthony Lynn had a good relationship. You know, he got booted out of Cali, the Chargers. But I think, to me, so much of quarterback development is coach development. I mean, those are some young kids. As much as people, these are still kids, 21, 22.
Yeah.
They're on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? They're on all these social media outlets. And I think coaches that can develop the person can really help. And so I don't know what that'll look like for Herbert now that Anthony Lynn's gone.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like Miami's setting themselves up for a great future. So I think long term it's going to be great. I know Coach Broussard's looking at me like,
I got so many thoughts in my head about your connection with the Miami Dolphins.
I swear they're my opinion.
Before we leave, Tyson never heard that story. You want to share the story with Tyson? Because he's thinking, like, what are they talking about?
Which one?
The Dolphin story.
Well, when I did the show,
when you dated a dolphin.
Yeah.
That story.
Okay, so I did a show with Damon Allen, who was quarterback for the CFL Argos, and I brought my son to work with me one day. He was little. He's now almost 18, so he was quite little. And he told Damon Allen that I was dating a Dolphins player. And he's like, really? You? And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of a Dolphins player. He played for, well, I told you I'm from Ontario. I'm in Hamilton. He played for the touch football team, the rec team. They were called the Dolphins.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a Dolphins player. I'm sorry, he's a Dolphin fan for life. He's a Marino fan. Hey, Marino's great. But anyways, it was just funny that my son was telling everyone, oh yeah, my mom's dating a Dolphin player. It's like, yeah, he plays for the local touch football team.
Right.
That's good.
Living the life. But anyways, no. So that was one of my questions, was when you are with someone, so your wives, are you guys the same? Do you guys like the same teams, or do you like the diversity of one person liking one team and another one liking a different one? Because I'm a Giants fan. So that was my fun story. So
that's a good one.
I got to jump in there, Tracy, and tell these guys that much respect. Appreciate you guys coming in. I think when you guys bring expertise to the show, I mean, we're always better for it. I think, you know, from a fan standpoint, people watching us, you know, we definitely hope that you guys, and I'm speaking for all of us, but, you know, everybody agrees that, you know, hopefully you guys will stay close to the show and there'll be opportunities down the road. So definitely much respect and enjoyed hanging out with you guys today. And I got to throw in this last one about our thoughts about GM. And I'm going to do a little bit of a name drop here, but I really believe it. I'm not just saying it, but Belichick doesn't really do normally what he's done, like he just said, with free agents. And I'm going to give you a wild card. Really good buddy of mine, Elliot Wolf, is there. And I really feel like that's a
Elliott used to be in Green Bay. Wasn't he in Green Bay?
Yeah, really good friend. And so I think, and I just like to think that I'm seeing a little bit of his thought process being involved there. And, that's just something. And I throw that out there to see if you guys may possibly kind of feel the same thing. But that's a little bit of a twist to that nobody really talks about, that he's now in that office and obviously would have a little bit of an ear there.
Well, to me, Belichick's been successful for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Adapt or die. I think that's, Saban used to say that, adapt or die.
Mm-hmm.
As much as Belichick has the Patriot way, if the Patriot way didn't work last year, I don't think he's one to just not try to do something different. Now, he may say he made the decision, but I think he recognizes, man, I need some more people at the table. And somehow or another, this is not the Patriot way. But he doesn't do things just to do things. There's some intentionality with that, and I would have to say it's with other people sitting at the table giving him some things to consider. You don't just do that because you think it's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been persuaded to some degree.
Absolutely. What do you think, Terry?
Yeah, 100%. I had a chance to meet Ellie. He actually was my first interview when I was trying to get a scouting opportunity in the league. So he's a bright guy. Like you said, like Bill wants to win, right? And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I think he's proven that over the last 15, 20 years. And that guy down in Tampa just won a ring. And I don't know if that sat too well with him. So I think, they're a team to watch. And they have a plan. And they always do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
No, Kirk, thanks so much for asking me, man. I enjoyed it. Tracy, thank you. Coach Chris, Terry, I really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you again, gentlemen. It was a great evening. NFL picks. We'll see how you guys make out. We'll definitely have to reconvene, do this conversation again, get some more topics going. See a couple of you, go head to head on a few topics. It's always good. It makes it for a fun evening. Tyson Lee, Terry Tharps, Coach Kirk Brassard, and Coach Chris Williams, and myself, Tracy Lynn. We want to thank you guys for joining us this evening and for commenting on stuff. And if you would like to follow these gentlemen, we will make sure that we post all their social media links. And in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great evening. And gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of the PlayCallers pod on this lovely Monday evening.
Thank you. God bless
you. Everybody have a good night.
Have a good one.
Night. Bye, guys.
Bye.